All right, so last time we left off on the lymphatic system, which was a part of the immune system. And the immune system is how you fight off diseases. So first, let's talk about things that cause disease. They're known as pathogens. So germ theory states that microscopic particles cause diseases. Now, in the old days, people thought that diseases were caused by evil spirits, which is why you had stuff like trepanation, which is like drilling of like holes in your skull to release evil spirits that were harming your body. However, nowadays we know that diseases are caused by things like viruses and bacterias, fungus, things of that sort. So they're known as pathogens as a whole. Now, there are two types of diseases. You have infectious, which can be passed from person to person. They're caused by germs or pathogens. And then you have non-infectious disease, which would be like heart disease and cancer. So a sick person can't pass on the disease. So for example, if you have like heart disease or any other autoimmune disease, you can't like just touch a person and then give it to that person. So those are non-infectious. Now, one of the first people to come up with germ theory was Louis Pasteur. He was the guy who came up with pasteurizing milk. So what you do is you heat up the milk before you bottle it, and that's supposed to kill all the pathogens that are found in the milk. Joseph Lister was also one of the, I guess, the fathers of immunology, if you want to call him that. Okay, Listerine is named in his honor because he's the first guy who kind of figured out, hey, I'm supposed to sanitize tools, and I'm supposed to like wash my hands before I operate or before I go from patient to patient. So there was something in the old days called puerperal or bed fever, which was affecting pregnant women, or women who were giving birth. So doctors were just going from room to room without washing their hands, and their hands were infecting women who had just recently given birth. Because obviously you're digging and you're reaching in private areas and sensitive body parts to say. So yeah, it's causing disease. Okay, so you have to sanitize your tools and you have to wash your hands. Robert Koch concluded that certain pathogens will cause a certain disease, which is logical, right? So like bacteria. Certain bacteria will cause pneumonia, or when you have the common cold, that's caused by viruses, right? Or athlete's foot is caused by fungus. Okay, so we'll talk about the 5 different types of pathogens. You have bacteria. These are single-celled organisms. They look rod-shaped. Sometimes they're spherical or even spiral-shaped like this. And, these guys might cause food poisoning. Right, here are some common diseases caused by bacteria, like tooth decay. Is caused by Streptococcus mutans, and prevention would be like regular dental hygiene, brushing and flossing your teeth. Right, Lyme disease, okay, Borrelia burgdorferi, okay, prevention, protection from tick bites. Okay, so ticks carry this parasite that cause this disease. Next up, viruses. Okay, we kind of mentioned this in the genetic series. So viruses will either latch on to your cells. This is a bacteriophage, so it's something that destroys bacteria. It's going to inject a piece of its DNA. It takes over the replication machinery of the cell, and then it's going to cause the cell to burst, and then more of these guys would then go on to infect other cells. So it's an exponential process, right? So this can repeat over and over until eventually the host dies. Here's a picture of chickenpox. Okay, lesions that pop up on your skin. It's no fun at all. Fungus, okay, in your lungs. Right, so this can cause breathing issues. Athlete's foot and ringworm are other examples. You have protozoa, okay, and these are little parasites that are transferred from mosquitoes as they drink your blood, and then these parasites will replicate in your liver, and this causes malaria as the blood cells are circulated through your bloodstream in your body. Okay, so pathogens can enter the body in different ways. You can have direct contact, okay, not washing your hands, putting your hands in your face, your eyes, rubbing your eyes, scratching your nose, washing or eating before washing your hands. So that's how you get germs in your body. Indirect contact, okay, so pathogens can be on surfaces like doorknobs and like chairs and like tables. Here's a picture of the cholera epidemic that killed about 10,000 people back in 1892. Let's give you some more vocabulary. So a vector is anything that carries a pathogen. Okay, vectors, for example, like the plague, the bubonic plague, which killed about 25% of the population in Europe back in like the 1300s or 1400s, I can't quite remember. Vector would be like the rats that were transported through shipping lanes in ships, boats, merchant lanes. So these rats had fleas on them, and any unsanitary conditions where you have rats in like sewage and like garbage and stuff like that, living in proximity with humans. This is how diseases get transferred as those fleas begin to bite human beings. Okay, and then you get bubonic plague. You get like these nasty lesions all over your skin. You start to vomit and feel nauseated, and yeah, it's not a good way to go out. So those are vectors, okay, things that carry diseases. So it could be insects, could be animals like rats, okay, or in the case of like rabies, it's carried by certain canines. Okay, just some pictures there of vectors and parasites. Okay, food can carry illnesses, okay, like foodborne illnesses, food poisoning, okay, which are caused by bacteria that feed on rotting food or spoiled milk. So now we can get into a talk on the immune system and how your body protects you from these pathogens and all these scary things out there. So your first line of defense, we'll talk about non-specific immune responses. Okay, so the first line of defense is your skin. It's a barrier that protects against pathogens. And your skin also secretes oil and sweat that makes your skin, again, hypertonic. Remember back in biochemistry, something that's hypertonic will cause your cells to burst because it's losing water. So bacteria that is in a hypertonic environment will eventually die. And there's also acid caused by these secretions that will kill pathogens and bacteria and viruses and fungus and stuff. So it's the first barrier, and it just prevents the pathogen from getting into you. Okay, your eyes, nose, ear, mouth, and the excretory organs. Okay, these are all open to the environment. Okay, and you have orifices. Okay, that bacteria can enter through. So you have mucous membranes, which also have small hairs. For example, take your nose, your nostrils. This is where pathogens can get trapped before it enters your body. Your stomach acids will digest, or it's going to destroy pathogens. If for whatever reason you ate some food that was really bad, maybe your stomach can destroy some of those parasites. And then your bodily secretions, okay, your mucus, your saliva, even your tears have lysozyme. Okay, it's an enzyme that breaks down the cell walls of bacteria, so it destroys them. Now, however, if pathogens enter your body, you also have other non-specific defenses, and we'll talk about each of those. Okay, you have cells and proteins, things like white blood cells that kill pathogens. And again, these are non-specific, okay, and so they just show up and they just gobble up foreign invaders. Other types of non-specific would be like fever, for example. So your body raises its own temperature, so then it makes it uninhabitable for foreign pathogens. It kills them, right? Like you might feel kind of sick or exhausted from the fever. But it's a good thing that that happens because it kills whatever enters inside of you. So like you're able to survive it, but the bacteria can't. Okay, now we'll talk about specific responses. Okay, so just understand any foreign invader that gets inside of you. So for example, let's just say like bacteria. Okay, it's going to have something called an antigen. It's a protein that identifies what it is. So your immune system is just basically like the police, right? And they're like, hey, show us some ID whenever something strange enters the body, because you wouldn't want your own immune system attacking your own cells, right? Your body has to figure out the difference between something that is harmful, potentially harmful, and something that is that belongs to itself. Okay, you wouldn't want like your own immune system attacking like your stomach cells or like your liver cells. So your own body cells present something called antigens, which is like an ID card. Okay, and really it's just protein. So it's like, okay, I could tell the difference between something that is outside and foreign and something that belongs to myself. That's how the immune system figures that out. So a bacteria that enters has something called an antigen. So your immune system is like, hey, let's see some ID. And the bacteria, like, is being a little crafty and sneaky. It's trying to like get in your body. It's like, I'm not so suspicious. But the immune system is like, okay, you don't have the right credentials to be in my body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a macrophage after you, and we're going to gobble you up. Okay, and so a macrophage can do that. And it starts presenting the antigen on its surface. It like starts creating copies of it. And it's like, okay, T cells, come over here and learn this antigen. Okay, learn about it. So it has a receptor that comes in, and this antigen stimulates the T cells to create something called antibodies. Okay, and now it commits this to memory, and the antibodies are now on B cells. Right, so this triggers this whole reaction where like T cells will start creating more B cells, and the antibodies can then hunt down other bacteria that look like this, because now it has learned what that antigen is. So this is basically the premise of how a vaccine works. Let's take the flu vaccine, for example. If you don't get your vaccine during flu season, then you might be sick for like 14 days or something like that. You'd be out for a pretty long time, and it hits you a lot harder. Okay, that's because the body has not yet learned the antigen from that flu strain. However, when you get a vaccine, okay, you're being exposed to a weaker version of the flu. So it has already learned some of those antigens. It recognizes it. It has already created T cells and B cells that have antibodies that fight this. And it can recognize the actual disease when you do get it. So if you do get the flu, but you've gotten the vaccine, then you're sick for maybe 1 or 2 days, as opposed to being out for 2 weeks and getting hit hard by this disease. So let's go over some of these again. Okay, your different immune responses, so non-specific. For example, you get a cut on the surface of your skin, and that pin had bacteria that was on it, so now the bacteria is seeping into your body. So now what's going to happen is you have these chemical signals that are brought about by macrophages and T cells and stuff like that. And this will trigger your blood vessels to dilate. And now phagocytes will move into the area, and then they just start gobbling up the bacteria. Okay, so this is why you start swelling when you get like a cut, okay, because your blood vessels have now expanded and they become leaky. So then phagocytes can then move into the area. Okay, this is non-specific. Okay, it's like the first response to a foreign pathogen. Okay, here's another, I guess, diagram of what inflammation looks like. Okay, you get a cut or a wound of some sort, and now phagocytes that are being carried by your bloodstream capillaries will open up a little bit. Okay, blood starts to fill the area, and phagocytes can now move in and get the job done. And not only phagocytes, but you have white blood cells, which get into the area as well. Okay, we discussed fevers a little bit ago. Okay, that's also non-specific defense. And now you have specific responses, which are like T cells and B cells, which are a result of acquired immunity. Either you get it from your mother or you get it from shots. Okay, and then this is more like a in-depth look. Okay, just different pictures. I've already kind of described these things. Okay, so antigens are like the foreign protein. It's like the ID card. Antibodies are the things that like fit around the antigen. So you see how the artists, what they're trying to illustrate here, you have an antigen that's like round, and then you have an antibody that like kind of fits around it. Okay, the antibody is like, if there's a perfect match here, it's going to invite more phagocytes and like T cells and stuff to come by, and then just to get rid of whatever is causing harm. Right? It's called cell-mediated immunity. Okay, and it's basically just T cells attacking antigens that don't belong in the body. Okay, because again, every cell in your body presents an antigen so that it can recognize itself. Okay, so then you might wonder, what are allergies? So allergies really is just it's a immune response to something that is not harmful. Okay, so for example, like pollen might trigger this in some people, or sun-dried tomatoes, or even peanut butter. Okay, there is an antigen that is presented within the body, and then your body just has like an overreaction, like an immune response, right? Like you start to get swelling, or lesions or rashes, because your body is like trying to fight off this thing that it thinks is harmful. And in some cases, you have autoimmune diseases where the white blood cells can't tell the difference between your own cells and foreign invaders. So then it starts to attack your own cells. So examples would be like rheumatoid arthritis, where your cells start attacking your joints and your cartilage, and it causes deformities in your hand. Or in a MS, okay, multiple sclerosis, okay, the myelin sheath, which covers your axons, get eaten up, and these nerve cells are then destroyed, and it causes inflammation and scarring. So that couldn't be good for your nervous system. And then other examples would be like for organ transplants. Okay, so organ transplants, let's say like you get like a new set of like kidneys or something, your body might start rejecting it. It might start rejecting the newly received organs because it thinks those organs are foreign things that shouldn't belong inside the body. So then doctors will prescribe people who have recently undergone transplant surgeries immunosuppressive drugs, which tells the immune system to calm down a little bit and not attack the organs. But not everything's perfect. The immune system can be weakened by certain diseases, so things like leukemia, okay, which is it's an abnormal or low white blood cell count. It's caused by cancer of the bone marrow. The bone marrow, again, people think of bones as being like this like dry like material, but in a living organism, bone is like a spongy like tissue, and it's alive. Okay, so deep inside the bone you have something called bone marrow. This is where blood cells are produced, and if you have leukemia, that means you have cancer of the bone marrow. So then you're not creating the right amount of white blood cells, or you're unable to make white blood cells. And if you don't have white blood cells, like things like T cells, then you can't fight off certain pathogens that invade. So another disease would be like HIV. So this is a virus that takes over your T cells. It destroys T cells so then it can make copies of itself in your body. And HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. And AIDS eventually leads to death because you die to opportunistic infections. So opportunistic just means someone who has HIV AIDS will eventually die of like pneumonia, preventable diseases from other pathogens like pneumonia, or like the simple cold might kill them because your immune system just no longer has white blood cells that are designed to fight off these types of diseases, and their skin starts to wither away, right? They'll start to get lesions, like dark lesions on it, because again, there's, it's just open season for your body, right? Pathogens can just do whatever they want now. There's no specific defenses against it. And yeah, that's what AIDS is. So it's basically because HIV takes over your T cells.